Welcome to Radio Free Will, a podcast for sovereign people. I'm your host, George McCullough, and we're coming at you live and direct from Greggstown, New Jersey. You know, if you've been following this podcast, we had Michelle Mockers on, and he's been talking about the positive dialectic, his philosophy for replacing capitalism, socialism, and communism. And I invite everybody to go back and listen to older podcasts so you can get yourself caught up. But today, Michelle, you want to talk about...
I wanted to buy about a subject that every time I have the occasion to talk about, I talk about it. Because we were eventually a very, very small army, but we tried during the World War II, at the end of the War II, we tried the French resistance, tried to help as much as possible with the means that we had. We tried to help beat the German and stop the German and do very noisy for the German. And we did succeed in many occasions. So
Okay.
I would, of course, like to say that the French, free French people, lost in the country, tried to help the Allies as much as they could.
Well, let's go back for a second before World War II. You said France had a small army. They didn't build up armaments after World War I, or?
No, don't forget that at the beginning of World War II, the French had more tanks than the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
And more planes. British and French have more planes than the Germans. And we did nothing with that. Absolutely nothing.
And what happened to this army? Because the Germans just rolled into France and took it over practically overnight, right?
Yeah, almost. But for one very specific reason, the French were still, I believe that the French were still at World War I, and they never believed that the German could go through the forest of Ardennes. You know, the French frontier was partly defended by the ligne Maginot, which was a very, very strong line, baton, guns. It was nobody could take it, if you want. And on the other side, we were used with World War I that the German was passed by the other side. We never imagined that the German would go through the forest of Ardennes. And they surprised the French. They was in France with nobody stopping them.
And how old were you before the start of World War II?
How long?
How old were you?
How old I was?
Yeah.
I am born in 1922. I am born after the war, which was supposed to be the last of all the wars, World War I.
So you were about 17 years old?
Yeah, I was in 49. In 49, at the liberation in 49, I was only, 22 years old.
Wow.
Something like that.
So you spent your teen life in World War II?
Oh, absolutely. I was in college when the Germans invaded France, and my father didn't want me to stay in La Baule, where I was at that period of time. He said, you should fly away because the Germans, we don't know what they are going to do with people your age. And in fact, I spent 3 years of my life just escaping the Germans because I was supposed to be one of the volunteers to work in German factories. It was an obligation, a legal obligation to go. And I didn't go, and I had a mandat d'arrêt against me by the Germans, on my name by the German, to arrest me. Because I didn't go to Germany, and I spent 3 years of my life trying to escape the German by all possible means, up to the time where I finally went in the middle of France to my grandmother, who had rented a house not to be in Paris, and that was where I started to create a group of resistance.
So,
I
what
was
kind of factory did they want you to work in?
Oh yes, all the German factory, you know, of armaments and all that type of factories, all German factories, and they were telling you if you for one volunteer we liberate one soldier, one prisoner. That was the the reward for going to Germany. But
Wow.
I didn't want to go and work in Germany. Reward one guy, hey, there were 1 million over there. That makes no difference. It was making a difference not to help the Germans to build armaments.
So, did the Germans have your name? Were you like on a list
Of
for people
course,
to
of
look out
course.
for?
Oh, absolutely. You were on. Absolutely, they are all the names. The Germans were very, very well organized, my dear. Very, very well organized. And when we had, at a point, I had a fake card of identity, you know, to be able to travel, to reach precisely. I was in the south of France. I was close to Marseille, and I wanted to join my grandmother in the middle of France. I had to travel, and I had to add an identity. And when you had a fake card of your identity, the big thing was to take the identity of an existing personage, which was a little younger than you, but the German could verify that the personage existed. So I was the double of René Bello, a man named René Bello, and I was René Bello for the rest of the war.
Oh, that's why the book is called René's War.
Yeah, René's War, that's why it's René's War. And besides that, what is strange is that René is my second name. But René Bello was an existing boy, 2 years younger than me.
Did you know this person?
No, absolutely not. The people who were making the fake, they were not, nobody was giving any information. You know, the big thing when you are invaded is to know as less as possible and to give as less as possible information, because you always have the ears ready to hear what you don't want them to hear precisely. And the messing, you know, became part of the British mission. I can explain why, but the rule was to know as less as possible, because if you are taken by the German and you know torture or whatever it is, you could not talk of what you didn't know. You could not give
Right,
names. Or
right.
so that was the rule number one. Don't know or know as less as possible.
So, it's possible that the real Rennie might be alive today.
Yes, you know. So what did happen is that I run one way, another one way, working for 15 days here or there, you know, for 3 years, my dear. For 3 years, I was absolutely nowhere. And finally, when I went to my grandmother, I found a job in a farm, and my grandmother was exactly at the limit. You know, there was free France and occupied France, and there was some kind of a frontier, and I was just next to that frontier. You know, the Germans were all the way to the coast up to Spain, and the Free France was inside of that. And my grandmother had rented a house that was very good for what we did after that, precisely in the middle of France and under the line of demarcation and on the road that was going to Vierzon, a railroad station. France has two big railroads, north-south, east-west. And on the east-west, there was Vierzon, and that was the only station where the retreating German, after the invasion of Normandy, could put their tank on trains and go to Germany. So all the Germans passed by where we were. And it's why we have been able to work a little to stop them.
So, how many people did you help recruit for the French resistance?
Well, you know, okay, let me tell you a little more. The French, I started to mentally running for 3 years. I said, no, I must fight them, you know. And it was the beginning of the D-Day was, you know, on. Mm-hmm. So I say we must try our best to to bother the German, and I must try to figure out how to do it. And I created a group of about 12 men. And on the 6th of June, the D-Day, we became some kind of an official maquis, resistance group. And my group of 12 men, where I was, I located it somewhere, all of a sudden, in 1 week, we were almost, in less than 1 week, about 1 week, we were almost 100 people. There was another group of men, they were 600, and they went up to 1,200. All the people who were camouflaged in the country, were joining to fight the Germans. That's very nice, but there is a fantastic problem, my dear, the problem you don't think about. It's nice to have eventually fight the Germans, but you have to eat to fight the Germans. And my number one problem was not to say if the guy could fight if we had the armaments, whatever it was, but was to feed all those people of one day to the next. You have nobody, and all of a sudden you have almost 100 people to feed. So that was a fantastic problem for me. That took a lot of time to solve.
Were you guys armed? Did you have rifles and?
No. It
armaments?
was very, in the beginning, when I created that group, we didn't have armaments for everybody. Plus, those armaments were armaments that were sent from England and were, I should say, in the fat, the grease of the manufacturer. They were absolutely not ready to fight. Plus, they were very light armaments. La mitraillette STEM, which is, you can see it absolutely everywhere, and it was really a piece of junk, let me tell you that, because everybody in England was manufacturing it. Everyone who could manufacture something like that was doing it. So you had, I believe it was 32 bullets, in the port bullets. But if you put the 32, the thing didn't work. The first one didn't go in. So if you didn't know that, you were pulling in the whole thing, and it's how you see that the two guys who attacked the big commander officer in Poland, and attacked their car at a curve. The one has a grenade and sent the grenade, and the other one has stem, and the stem didn't work. Absolutely didn't work. Because the stem didn't work. You had to know exactly how to use the stem. Plus the stem, it was very nice to have stem. They sent it because it was a very cheap armament. But if you wanted to kill somebody with that, you have to know exactly how to do it. Because if you just shoot at that person, you can be sure that you will never kill it. It will go poof. It will go on the right. You say boom, and it goes on the right. You have to start to kill somebody, to start absolutely on the left and low, because it will go up. So you kill nobody with that. It was nice to have that. You to feel confident. More serious was carbines and things like that. And we even inherited of some bazookas, something like that, and a lot of plastic. Plastic was very useful to blow up everything you wanted to blow up.
Plastic explosives.
Yeah. And still you had to know, it was very, very, you could do everything you want with that and blow it.
And so how did you coordinate amongst resistance groups?
Okay, that's precisely the problem. And it's precisely, okay, so someday, right in the beginning, I learned that there was a British mission parachuted in France next to us. And I took contact with them right away. And they took a little room, a little villa, a little house, just where we were. So I was in permanent, contact with them. Uh-huh. And the English were providing, English planes were providing the armaments. So the British mission had the radio. And it's why the radio was the most important person in the world, because if you had no radio, that was over. You could not let London know that you were not here, so the radio was the number one person. The radio play a role in my story, and it's why I'm mentioning the radio. So why the radio? The radio could give informations about several times we give informations, right informations, or ask London for armaments and things like that, And we were informed by London that that day we will have that shipping of that and that. So.
How did they ship it? Did they fly it over and drop it down in the
Oh
parachute?
yes, they drop the containers. So you had to establish 4 lights because the planes were flying too low to estimate their own altitude. And they could estimate their altitude by the fire. We were putting fire at 100 meters of each other, and the plane knew exactly at which altitude it was and drop the thing at that altitude. So it's why once we say, oh, it's too long, we will shorten that little distance. And we shortened the distance between the land. And I had just the time to jump before receiving on the container and the parachute on my head. Because the
Well,
plane...
you couldn't see it?
No, the plane calculated that it was too high. So they went lower, and lower, the parachute has hardly the time to open.
So you used the radio to say that we need
need this
supplies.
or we need this or we need that. So in the area where I was, there was my group, if you want, with the British mission. We were together. And then there were 1, 2, 3, 4 other groups. One which was something like 1,800 men, one which was a communist one. And that is something that I should also talk about. And the others, there was one with the 2 others, about 300 or 400 people. So I was the one. So I became member of the British mission because Pearl told me, you are the one who are going to visit all the area, visit the maquis of the...
Who was Pearl?
Pearl was my commanding officer, a British, she was captain, a British captain woman, who had been parachuted with a man, a helper, and the radio. There were 3 people. That was the British mission. And Pearl told me, we are going to ask London to make you a British, part of the British mission, because your job will be to visit all the groups around. Because the British mission was more important, if you want, than few men few. If you cut the communication with London, it's over. And London has no way to know where you are, what you do, provide you with armaments and all that. So the British mission being the most important thing, I told Pearl, you don't go around to visit the groups or lieutenant. I will visit all the groups and know what they want. So I became, in fact, and it's in my papers, I became, in fact, charged of all the money, because you had to buy things, or giving a paper saying I took this or that, giving a receipt of what you were talking, which had been paid by the French government after that. If you were taking, an automobile, for example, you needed an automobile, I was giving a receipt for the automobile. I was in charge of that. So I spent my time, and these were all my adventures, because we were in a country completely occupied by the Germans, and I was passing my time going from one group to another one using the roads. And I've been arrested 2 or 3 times, one time very seriously. I've been arrested because I was, once more, going all around. There is another thing which came through my mind, which was I was receiving a big box of money, from French money. And I was always wondering,
you always had money in your pocket.
Where is that French money coming from? Maybe they manufacture it the last days, to send it to me. I didn't know. Always, when I was having that big box, it was a lot of money, because, to feed it, I was, in fact, providing money for something like 200 and more than 2,000 men, people. So that requires a lot of money. And one of the very difficult things because, it's sorry to say that, but you had a lot of French people who were pro-Germans. And who were eventually, some of them were eventually ready to tell the Germans where the French resistance were and so on. So one of my main problem was to find out who I was talking with. If it was really a friend, if I could, do it, or if it was not a friend. And there are some that have been arrested because they give away some French people to the Germans.
What was the French government doing at this time? Were they
The French
helping you, or were they?
No.
The Germans took them over, or?
No, the French government was basically helping the Germans.
This was de
Even
Gaulle.
yes, they were basically helping the Germans.
De Gaulle was.
De Gaulle, and after De Gaulle, De Gaulle was after De Gaulle. They are the milice, the French milice, which are the armed people to keep order, but they were for the Germans. The gendarme, the gendarmerie, the gendarme, they did ask me once, one group of those people, they asked me to attack them. Like that, they could be made prisoner.
To attack French?
No, we were supposed to attack them. They had a big building with their family. They were the gendarmes. They were living, but they were supposedly working for the government. They were the people of the government. So one of them came one day to see me and say, "Hey, we are fed up with all that. We want to be with you, but we cannot leave because our wives and all that are going to make prisoners or sent out. So you attack us and you take us." So I organized a full attack of the Germans at midnight.
Germans or the
firing
French?
over the roof.
The Germans or the French?
The French.
So you attacked the French,
The French.
so that people could escape. I mean, you could take them
Le gendarme,
prisoner.
that was the gendarmerie, the gendarme, the French, police, So they asked me to attack them, to come with us. But attacking them, they don't look like if they were joining us. We made them prisoner. So we attacked them at midnight with a lot of noise, with a lot of where you want, and they joined us. They did join us, and they were very useful because they were people who knew armaments and knew how to use a gun, when most of our people didn't use. And we put them to teach really to train the people to use, guns.
Well, how did you feel when the French government is working with the Germans?
We feel very bad, but what can you do? What can you do?
I guess it's survival, and you just got to do it.
My dear General de Gaulle served France to, he maybe avoided the worst, but at the point it became that France became, the helper of the Germans. So we were against all that, absolutely against. So how to fight? The Germans were absolutely everywhere. There was Free France were supposed to be Free France, but 6 months after Free France, the Germans were absolutely everywhere.
And you also probably had to look out for French officials. If they were working with the Germans, how do you know who's who?
That was the big difficulty. But when I was in the Marquise, we ignored the French. We ignored.
Did you have secret handshakes, or code words that you could?
No, I ignored them completely. It's too difficult to know if the employee of the government at that time were really against or pro the Germans. It was impossible, and we didn't need them, in fact. If we did that, we were in the woods, so we didn't need them.
Well, it's probably best to be kind of anarchistic, because the Germans can't figure out what it is what your next move is, because you guys don't know, the people next door don't know, and
to attack the German was very simple. It was very, very simple. You had the railroads. You took attack the railroads, but the railroads, with the plastic, the railroads, you had to pay attention because many times they had a flat wagon in front of the locomotive with 30 French people to eventually work on the bridge or work on what was destroyed. So you have to pay attention not to kill them. So that was not the breaking the line was not very efficient. We gave up. We gave that up. The only thing that succeeded is that I have organized some kind of a secret telephone from other countries, to me, and we learned that a train of ammunition was traveling and was going to pass by where we were, and all of a sudden we said that to London, and London sent one plane, not two planes, that started to blow up the train. And the train makes 3 days to blow up completely. So for 3 days, the traffic was completely stopped. That was one of our great successes.
Wouldn't it have been just to stop the train and get the armaments?
How can you do that?
I don't know.
You had the Germans everywhere, my dear. It was absolutely impossible. Plus, it was what kind of armaments? We didn't even know what it was. And we could use it, and beside that, it was the Germans. That was defended by the Germans, so we could not attack that.
And so how did you keep morale up in your group, besides from feeding people good? How do you keep morale up so people want to keep going and don't give up?
Oh, we gave them a lot of work to do. Okay, so what became the main job was that some of the roads, the Germans were obliged to pass by those roads. So we were attacking the German on the roads with a very specific techniques to do that. You dispose of a line of guys ready to shoot at the Germans and to retreat absolutely. No fight with the Germans. We were not in no way able to fight the Germans, have a real
Right.
fight with the Germans. So you surprise the Germans by fighting at them and you disappear.
Hit and run.
Exactly. That was the main tactic.
And I think if folks that are younger that are listening to this, there weren't a lot of roads back then. There were just, a handful of roads? It's not like today
exactly.
where
they
there's
were
roads.
obliged to pass by the same roads. And it's how I was some kind of a I don't know what to say, I was the guy everywhere and nowhere. And I saw, for example, and I count them, 50 cyclists, bicycle soldiers with bicycles, 50 of them. German, going up, the road was up, and they were walking, pushing their bicycle. And not one bicycle had tires. They were all with, a little thing, a little, how do you call that, linen around the tire, with ropes and all that. They had no tires. I saw a beautiful Renault, Grand Sport Renault, the big car, elegant, very, with 4 German officers leaving, they had to go back to Germany. They had no tires. The car was making with no tires.
Is that when you started feeling like, we have a chance to win?
Yeah, but at the same time, you also have some groups which were very, very, very mean. You have to pay attention. They have been made prisoner with the new commanding of the French sent by de Gaulle. De Gaulle sent a captain to be supposedly the big director of the whole thing. And I was captured on the 15th of August in Valençay by the SS Das Reich. And the SS Das Reich is the Das Reich that burned 1 week before they had killed Oradour-sur-Glane. You heard of Oradour-sur-Glane, that little village that has been completely destroyed with all the inhabitants killed by that SS Das Reich. And they make me prisoner 1 week later. I was transporting the new commanding officer, French commanding officer.
So you were taken prisoner?
Yeah, I was taken prisoner.
How did you...
I was with my car, of course, a Citroën, a Citroën. And the Citroën, because the German had Citroën. So if you were meeting, like I did, a convoy of trucks, for example, German trucks, and you were in your Citroën, they did know who you were. They could suppose that you were the Gestapo or you were something like that, and you make
A
this
Citroen
sign.
is an expensive car.
No, it's the first wheel. You saw it everywhere on movies. The little Citroën, the flat
It's
car.
a motorcycle or?
No. It's a flat car with it's the first car with power on the first wheel on the
Oh,
one
all
wheel.
right. Front wheel drive.
Yeah. So that was the big German. The German in France, they use only that. And the Gestapo, the French Gestapo, use only that. And I was using that. So if I was crossing, it did happen to me twice, to cross a convoy of German trucks, I made hello, hello. So they didn't know if I was not a guy of the Gestapo in in the little car like that. So I escaped for that. So what were you asking me?
Oh, you were taken prisoner. How did you get out of?
Oh yes. So he said, put the car against the wall. I put the car against the wall, and my commanding officer was resting in the car. He didn't want to go out. He was not, I believe. I will tell you something.
He was drunk.
No. He was just fearing for his life, I believe.
Oh.
So I leave him over there in the car. And after a war, you don't know, you have reflexes like that. I get mad. And I had asked the Château de Valençay, the owner, to give me his pass with his car. So I had the pass. The car was not the same car, but the German didn't pay attention to the car, to the identification of the car. So I get mad. So I went to see there was big German officer in the middle of the road, giving orders. He was the commanding officer of the old Das Reich, So I went to see him, and that pass was signed by Stuppnagel, General Stuppnagel. And General Stuppnagel was the general commanding all the German forces in France. So it was a big name. So I say, I risk absolutely nothing at all. I'm going to put them under his nose, and he can do nothing at all. So I put them under his nose, and he looked at me, and he said, "Sir," in good French, he told me that in good French, "you ignore one thing. General Stuppnagel has been by Hitler yesterday. He is not anymore commanding the army in France. So your pass or nothing is the same." And he took the pass and torn it. And he said, "Go out." And this is how I escaped.
So when Hitler let go of General Stuppnagel,
Yeah.
was that a sign that you guys were winning?
We didn't know it. I learned it. And the most efficient thing is that he told me that in French. And the whole Das Reich was speaking French.
So you were like one of the first people to know that the German commanding officer in France was fired.
He was speaking French, and the whole division was speaking French. And you know why? They were all Alsatian. And in Alsace, you had the pro-French and the pro-German. And they were the Alsace pro-German. And the whole division was speaking French. And he addressed myself with a little smile. He addressed myself in French, saying, "You don't know it, but I can understand you." But he didn't verify the number of the car, nothing at all.
And he didn't even go over to the commanding officer and say, "Get out of the car"?
No. I get mad. I just get mad. Sometimes you have a reflex like that. After 2 or 3 hours in the car, I'm fed up to see that guy commanding. They burn this house, they take that wine here, they take that radio here. They were pillaging everything, And the whole division, the car, the trucks, the tanks, everything was here in the street. So they were all the Germans were going into all houses and picking up all they can pick up. So during that time, I was over there, and that officer was in the middle of he was not moving. Nice man, a very nice guy. So after 2 or 3 hours, I don't remember how long, I got fed up. You have reflexes like that. I say, where's the risk? or at the point where we are, where is the risk? So I go like that with my pass.
And what town was this?
That was in Valençay, on
And
the 15th of August.
how, of what year?
That was 48.
So it's 1 year before the end of the war.
No, the liberation of Paris was in 48.
Oh, okay.
And we fought after the liberation of Paris.
Oh, I'm sure you
because
did.
the liberation of Paris was on one side, and we were under that, and the Germans were still passing by to go to Vierzon and put their tank on trains, you know. And once we did one, I can tell that, we did one very interesting stop of Germans. 15,000 Germans stopped in the middle of nowhere. They didn't want to stop in the forest because they were always afraid to be attacked. But they were stopped because they had no more gas. So you had all the trucks, very clean trucks with, I don't know, 20 soldiers in every trucks, and a gun at the end of the trucks, a gun pulled by the truck. So there was a whole division, 15,000 men, no more gas. They could don't know where. So they asked us to surrender, but they wanted an officer to surrender. So I gave them the number one, my Pearl. I just went to Pearl and said, hey, they are over there. And they had no gas. And one of my groups had picked up two trucks of gas, you know, with the swastika, big painted on the side, you know, on a ground which was airfield ground, not too far away. And they had been successful at picking up two trucks, absolutely full of gas.
The Germans or the French?
The French. So I had those two trucks, and when those 15 girls could not go any further with that, I give them the gas with their own trucks with the swastika on top, you know. So I pull out in every truck at the gas, except I forget to tell them only one thing. That was plain gas.
Oh,
And
kerosene.
plain gas, you have to put oil in the gas if you want to go very far. I didn't tell them. I put the gas like that.
I did that with a chainsaw one time, so the engine in the chainsaw did not last very long.
No, I believe they just have to go to the frontier of to France where the Americans, I believe they were able to go to the Americans. I never heard of them anymore. So they have just been able to go to the Americans, but I should say no more, because the gas with no oil in it, the engine could not make it.
Well, Michel, we're getting close to the end of our time today.
I have not
And we
told-
got a lot more stories to go, don't we?
Oh, absolutely, my dear. Because I didn't tell you the most important story of all that.
All right, well, people, you're going to have to tune in next week if you want to hear that story. But people can read this account of World War II.
I did not. One of my friends published a book called René's War, and you can find it at Amazon.
René's War, and this is like your
This-
autobiography.
yeah, my personal war, if you want. My story of what I went through that war, because it's not a war in the trenches or whatever, you know, one of those war like some war, regular war, or big artillery or what. No, that's something else. That's once more, and we did what we can, and I will tell you next time. I will tell you what we did. Really, we were successful in few things.
If folks want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, my name is Michel Mockers, in one word, at gmail.com.
And you have a website where people can read the positive dialectic along with other things.
It's
that,
no-pennies.com.
and
We have no money.
and you're
So
working.
there's no pennies.
You're working on a book of cartoons too, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's coming out soon.
Yeah. It's
All right.
coming soon.
And we're going to be talking about that in the near future too.
Yeah, because I will give you one before we can talk. I'm going to print them.
Okay. Michel, it's been a pleasure.
No, George, I am very happy to tell, maybe it looks like stories like that, but very happy to tell Americans that we did, in fact, we try to help as much as we could to help it was the D-Day, you were in Normandy, the American allied were in Normandy, and we try our best to bother the Germans and to help all the people who are here to liberate us. So we try our best to help to that liberation.
It sounds like you did a lot. I want to thank everybody for listening today, and please join us again next week for another edition of Radio Free Will. Thanks, Michel.
George, it was my pleasure.